Hello everyone, and welcome all of you to Unacademy, a place where you can crack your toughest of examinations with top educators, quality content, and not to forget the great learning experience. Therefore, let us crack your 9th and 10th examinations with Unacademy with the access of unlimited live and recorded courses from India's best educators. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Tasneem Ahmed and I have done my master's and MPhil in English. I have also been certified in TESOL and I have trained 1,000 plus students and I have 8 years of professional teaching experience. Therefore, be rest assured you are in good hands. In this video, we will be learning about verbs, the types, and the different forms of verbs that we have. Stay tuned because there are many types of verbs that you need to understand as a student. Well, before I continue with the topic, there is something you have to know about Unacademy, like what you can expect with Unacademy. Well, for starters, you have daily live classes where you can chat with the educator, engage in discussions, ask your doubts, and answer polls, all while the class is going on live. And then you also have live tests and quizzes to evaluate your preparation with the regular mock tests and quizzes. Then you have the structured courses, and finally you also have the unlimited access, which you will get it on buying the subscription. But one subscription gets you the access to all our live and recorded courses to watch from the comfort of any of your devices. So all you have to do is buy the subscription and get your free live classes and prepare with the top educators and get the syllabus of mathematics, social science, Hindi, science, and of course English. Well, you can also talk to us on Telegram application by downloading the Telegram application, typing the link in the URL, and then clicking on join. You will also have to install the Unacademy learning application on one of your devices. And then finally, you will have to buy any one of these subscriptions. These subscriptions are available on a limited amount of discount, like 6 months is available for 33% and 12 months is available for 50%, 24 months plan is available for 58% off, and 36 months plan is available for 60% of off, and 48 months plan is available for 67% of off. Well, along with that discount, if you were to type the code TA01, you get additional 10% of discount on the existing discount available. That is, if you were to buy the plan of 12 months, which is already on a discounted rate of 50%. And with the code TA01, you get additional 10% of discount, which means the 12 months pack is available now on the discount of 60%, which means you do not have to pay 15,000, but then you will only be paying 13,500 rupees for a year. And for a month, you will only pay 1,125. If you are a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, or a 12th grader, go ahead and buy the subscription for 12 months and avail the opportunity of that extra 10% of discount on the existing discount, and avail this course only for 13,500 rupees for one whole year. Do not forget to type the code TA01 when you proceed to pay. Well, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and buy the subscription today and get cracking your examinations. Well, about today's video, like I told you, today's topic is about verbs and the types of verbs and the forms of verbs that we have. Well, before I proceed with the types and the forms, let me ask you the question, what is a verb? What is the formal definition of a verb? Well, a verb is a word which denotes action. As in, a verb is a word that speaks about the action, as in physical action, mental action, state, or even possession. like physical action, which is walk, run, where physical activity is involved. Think, dream, where you still the action is performed but in our head. And then is, am, are, where you actually just express the state of the action, and then where you express the possession, like has, have, and had. So a verb in a nutshell is a word that denotes the action in a sentence. Now let us move on to the types of verbs that we have. Well, we have many types of verbs, but the main verbs are, the two segregations of the verbs are, one called as the main verbs and number two called as helping verbs. Well, main verbs are words like walk, talk, run, think, smell, sleep, drink, search, hear, jump, swim, and rise. Well, you have many number of verbs. I couldn't put all of them over here, so this is only for your understanding. These types of verbs are called as main verbs. And then you have something called as helping verbs. Helping verbs are many. You also call them as auxiliaries. Number one, they're called as be verbs, which are is, are, am, was, were, will be. And then there are other types which are called as have verbs, which include has, have, and had, which are used in perfect tenses. And then you have do verbs, which are do, does, and did, which are used in simple tenses. And then you also have modals, like can, could, shall, should, will, would. There are many models which I cannot put in over here, but then I will be recording another video on models. Stay tuned, and there I will explain everything about the models and every model that we have out there in English. Well, for now, the helping verbs are divided into be verbs, have verbs, do verbs, and modal verbs. Let us proceed towards knowing the different types of main verbs that we have. When I said main verbs, we are talking about the complete main verbs, and they are further divided into something called as dynamic verbs, stative verbs, linking verbs, and regular and irregular verbs. Let me take you through these verbs one by one. Number one, dynamic verbs. Now, what are dynamic verbs? Well, dynamic verbs are nothing but the action verbs. As in, supposing if you were to take the example run, jump, drink, speak, laugh, walk. Now, analyze these words. Running includes your physical involvement. You cannot just run through your mind. You need to get involved physically. Same way, jumping requires a physical activity, drinking as well, speaking as well, laugh and walk. Now, these types of verbs which express physical action, and also the verbs like melt, which shows actually the process of something, like ice melts, right? So melting is a process, dying is a process, send, receive, update, explain. So all these types of verbs actually show a kind of action, physical action involved, and these types of verbs are called as dynamic verbs. And only dynamic verbs alone can be used in your continuous forms. Keep this in your mind. This is really important for you to understand that only dynamic verbs can be used in continuous forms. And I'll very quickly tell you the other version of it as well. Now let us focus a little more on dynamic verbs, as in, supposing if you use it in a statement, she runs every day. So physical action involved, or you can also say she is running in the park. Physical action. She laughed really hard, or she was laughing out loud. Definitely physical activity involved. I walked all the way home. I am walking at the moment. definitely physical activity involved. And then the verbs which show process, which are also called as dynamic verbs, like the ice is melting. They explained me the whole process. We can send and receive messages every day on our cell phones. Now, these types of verbs are called as dynamic verbs. Remember, only dynamic verbs can be used in continuous forms, because there are other types of verbs, other type which is called as stative verbs, which cannot be used in continuous forms, because these stative verbs do not actually express a physical activity, but then they only express a state or a condition. Like if you take the example of possess or contain, consist, have, has, own, see, hear, sound, love, adore, hate, loathe, detest, or believe, or think, or forget. All these verbs, try and figure it out. Try and think, try and analyze. Do these verbs include any kind of physical activity? Supposing if I say, I possess an iPhone. Supposing if I say I possess an iPhone, does it show any kind of physical involvement like the verb run or walk? Does it show any physical activity? When you run, your entire body is involved. When you walk, again, your entire body is involved. But possess, does it include any physical activity? No, it is only an expression of state or condition. Similarly, contain, consist, have, has, own, or even if you take believe, believe is more of a mental situation, or think, or forget, remember, imagine. There are many stative verbs. So, stative verb is a type of verb which doesn't express any physical activity, but it only expresses a state or a condition. And another thing for you to understand is it doesn't come, or it is, these verbs are not used in continuous forms when you use them as stative verbs, as expressing the state or condition. You can use the continuous forms only with dynamic or action verbs. As a student, you must be aware of the difference of a dynamic and a stative verb, because this is really important for you to differentiate where to use the continuous form and where not to. So if you go ahead and if you end up using, for example, in this statement, like I told you, she has an iPhone, which means it's expressing a state or showing possession, right? Now, if I say she is having an iPhone, this is totally incorrect. This is grammatically not correct. This is incorrect. So you need to understand stative verbs are not used in continuous tenses like this, as in is having, is owning, am understanding. That is, ing forms are not used in stative verbs. This is important for you to understand. You need to differentiate. You need to be able to differentiate between the dynamic and the stative verbs. So she has an iPhone. She owns a house in the suburbs. I understand how you feel. I believe it's my turn. I remember those days. I cherish those days. You cannot use this in continuous forms because these are has, owns, understand, believe, remember, cherish. These are your stative verbs, which do not show physical action. If it is really hard to figure out whether a verb is dynamic or stative, just focus on the physical activity expressed in the statement. Well, definitely when you say she has an iPhone or she owns a house, I understand, I believe, there is no physical activity expressed over here. So it's pretty obvious that these are your stative verbs, and stative verbs are not used in continuous forms. They are not used with ing forms like this. Remember, it is important. The next is verbs can be both static and dynamic. Static as in stagnant, as in no movement. All right, that is why the word is stative, which means no movement. So the verbs can function like a few verbs, well, not all of them. A few can function like static or dynamic, as in they can show the physical activity. They can show the physical activity, or they can remain stagnant by just expressing the state or the condition. Like, for example, if you take the verb have. Well, have is used to express the meaning with a meaning of own or possessing, to show possession. It is used in static sense, as in with no physical activity, and not in continuous forms, like this. She has a polite demeanor, I'm sorry. She has a polite demeanor. I have a new car. I had fever last night. So over here, had, have, has. All these are the forms of have verbs. So here we are trying to say that she had something as with the meaning of own or possess. Here there is no physical activity. When you say he has a polite manner, it's not the physical activity that you are talking about. I have a new car, it is something that I own. I had fever, something that I had. It's not the physical activity that we are referring to. Therefore, this is your static or stative verb. Now, supposing if you say, I had brunch today, or we are having brunch today, here you are not referring to something that you are possessing, but then it is referring to something that you are doing, as in had, as in the process of eating. Similarly, we are having brunch this Sunday. So this is another physical activity of eating. Similarly, she has oatmeal every morning, and she is having oatmeal for breakfast. So these are expressing actions, physical activity over here. That is why here it is used as a dynamic verb. The same verb is functioning like static or stative here, but here it is functioning like dynamic because it involves physical action, and you should be able to differentiate between these two. Similarly, I have shower soon after my workout. So having shower or involves a physical activity, or when you say she was having a shower, definitely involving a physical activity. Therefore, these verbs here, the same verb, the static verb or the stative verb, is functioning like a dynamic verb, which you must understand depending upon the usage, expression, or the context. Another example that I would like to give over here is the word think. So think obviously means an opinion. You're stating an opinion, and it is a mental action, not a physical activity at all. So obviously it is a stative verb, right? That's correct. So definitely you cannot use it in your continuous forms. That's correct as well. So when you say like this, I think we all together can survive this pandemic. So it's my opinion. I'm stating it, I'm putting it forth. It is my opinion. That is what I think in my head. It's my opinion that we all together can survive this pandemic. Similarly, she thinks she'll outsmart him. Again, this is my opinion that I am putting it forth. So here, I'm not talking about any physical activity being involved. There is no physical activity here. It's only about something that I am thinking in my mind. I have it in my mind and I'm putting it forth to you. It's my opinion to say it correctly. But when you say it like this, I'm thinking about moving up north. So here you are actually considering or concentrating or contemplating, like thinking as a long, hard, and you're thinking like, okay, you're gonna be doing this in a couple of days or a few days. Or when you say, I think twice before lying, or I'm thinking of throwing a party, I think we should party. These are not my opinions, but then these are actions that I am doing after a long and hard thought, after considering for a long time, after concentrating about it, after contemplating about it. These are not opinions, but then these are activities that I am trying to do. Therefore, here the word think, which is a stative verb, is functioning like a dynamic verb. So here you can definitely use it as a in continuous form. But when you use it as a stative verb, you cannot. So the thing that you have to understand and remember as a student is there are dynamic and stative verbs. Dynamic verbs express physical action and they can be used in continuous forms, whereas stative verbs are those which do not express physical action and they cannot be used in continuous forms either. So this is something that you should be capable of differentiating. Now let us move on towards the other kind of main verb, which is linking verb. Well, the word link itself is self-explanatory. Link as in connect. Connect what? Two words. Well, in this statement here, let us take this. Ben is strong. All right, and the verb is. So here, Ben is our noun and strong is our adjective. So we are actually connecting these two words. Ben and strong is getting connected by the verb is. That is factor number one. That is factor number one. Number two that you have to focus over here to make it out, to make out whether this is that this is a linking verb is Ben is strong, right? So this is an adjective, isn't it? So this adjective is describing the subject. Therefore, what do we have in between to connect the subject and the adjective? We have the verb, and this verb is called as linking verb. So the linking verb is actually a kind of verb that connects two words, that is subject, or in fact, or just you can just say that it is describing the subject. So usually this is what happens. Linking verbs are usually used to describe the subject, like Ben is strong. These are again pretty much similar like stative verbs. They do not show the physical activity. No physical activity is involved over here, even with linking verbs. But they connect the subject and they describe the subject. Ben is strong. Ben seems strong. Ben appears sad. Ted is clever. Emma has been a teacher. So if you can take a look at these examples, these words, the entire statement is a description about the subject, that is Ben and Ted and Emma. So the words which are connecting the descriptions with the subjects are has been, is, appears, seems, and is. So these verbs are called as linking verbs. Now there are many types of linking verbs, like to be verbs, like is, are, am, was, were, has been, have been, had been, is being, are being, was being, will have been, become, becomes, became, has become, have, it should have been have become, had become, will have become. And then to seem, like seemed, seems, has seemed, have seemed, and had seemed. All these are proper linking verbs, as in they only function like linking verbs in a statement and they do not function like any other thing. But if you take a look at these verbs, these are your be verbs, like is, are, am, was, were. These are your be verbs. But these verbs can be used with other main verbs, like she is talking. Now, in this situation, this is not your linking verb, but this can be used with your main verb. But this is not your linking verb. So here, linking verb is something that actually connects the adjective with the subject. So that you must remember. Now, a few verbs function both like linking and action. And how would you differentiate? That is by the function that's being performed in a statement. Like here, the soup smells delicious. What did I say a linking verb is? What is the function of a linking verb over here? Linking verb is something that describes the subject, right? So the soup smells delicious, which means the soup is delicious, and here it's a description of soup. So obviously the verb is your linking verb. In statement number 2, she smells the soup, and over here she smells. Here this actually shows the physical action, as in she is trying to smell, trying to do a physical activity. So here the same word smells is used as your dynamic or action word. Another way you can figure your linking verb is by replacing it with any one of the linking verb, that is, or in the previous slide I showed you a number of linking verbs, or you can pick any one and try replacing it. If supposing the meaning remains intact, then that is definitely your linking verb. And if it doesn't change, I'm supposing if it changes, then it is your dynamic verb. I'll clarify that with an example here. The soup is delicious, or if you say the soup smells delicious, you have eliminated the word smells and you have inserted the word is. So when you say like this, the soup is delicious or the soup smells delicious, the meaning over here still remains intact. It doesn't change. It is still the same. The soup is delicious or the soup smells delicious, both mean one and the same. But if you try and do the same thing with this one, and if you replace the word smells with is, she is the soup, well, the meaning over here completely changes. It doesn't make any sense. So this is your dynamic verb and not your linking verb. So that is one way of figuring it out. Let us take another example, that is, she grew quiet after a while. So she grew quiet after a while. The verb over here is grew. So here it's only the expression. Here it is quiet is describing the person, the subject, and therefore this is our linking verb. And here, when you take it as she grew those tomatoes in her backyard, she grew those tomatoes in her backyard, as in the physical activity. Therefore, this is your dynamic verb. Another way of figuring it out is by replacing that with a proper linking verb. And here we will use the word become. That is, supposing if you were to replace grew with become. So you could say she became, let's change the tense as well with a proper tense. She became quiet after a while. So is the meaning similar over here? She grew quiet after a while and she became quiet after a while. The meaning is same, right? So this is obviously our linking verb. In statement number 2, let's try and replace the grew with became. B-E-C-A-M-E, became. So here you would say she became those tomatoes in her backyard. No, not really. It doesn't. The meaning is totally different from what the statement is. So this is your dynamic verb and not your linking verb. So here the same verb, which is grew, can be used in as linking verb, which describes the person, and as your dynamic verb, which shows physical action. Let me give you one more example before I proceed with the other topic. That is, she appeared happy after the visit. She appeared happy, describing the subject. How did she appear? Happy, adjective. So appeared is your linking verb. The second one, she appeared in front of the jury. She appeared in front of the jury, meaning she was outside somewhere. She gets up from there, she walks all the way in front of the jury. So that entails a physical activity, right? So there is physical activity involved. Therefore, this is your dynamic verb. Now let us try and apply the formula of replacing the linking verb to both and see if the meaning changes or remains intact. Now, supposing if you replace appeared with is, and here is. How does it sound? She is happy after the visit. She is in front of the jury. She is happy definitely the same. She is in front of the jury means she's already in front of the jury. It doesn't say she was somewhere else and she walked all the way in front of the jury, which is done by appear. It says she is already in front of the jury. So the meaning changes, right? So this is not our linking verb. In fact, this is our dynamic verb showing physical activity. Whereas here, the same verb, appear, is our linking verb. So this tells us that we will have to differentiate the verbs based on the function they perform. Now let us move on to the main verbs, which are also divided as regular and irregular verbs. To understand this, let me take you through the different forms of verbs that we have, which are, let us take a look at this. Walk. When you add plus s to the root verb, well, this I am going to name it as root verb, or you can also call it as base verb. So when you add plus s, as in letter s, it becomes walks, and then this is called as, let us name it as plus s, and then you add ing to the root verb, and here it becomes walking, and then you add ed, and here it becomes walked, which is our past tense, which is the past tense. And then you have the fifth form where you add ed, and the word is walked. No difference between the past tense or the fifth form, which is actually called as past participle, which is called as past participle. So this is our number one form, which is root verb. Number two is plus s. Number three is ing form. Number four is the past tense. And number five is your past participle. So here, walk becomes walks, and then walking. And then you have walked and walked, which is past tense and past participle. All right, is that clear? I hope it is. Now let us move on to this verb, which is eat. And okay, I'm sorry, this is not eat, but then this is eats, E-A-T-S, eats. That is when you add plus s to the root form, that becomes eats. And then you add ing and it becomes eating. And the past tense of eat is ate, which is this, and then the past participle is eaten, where you have added en. So you can see the past tense and the past participle. Now try and compare this verb and this verb over here. Well, let me remove all this so that you can take a clear look at it. Just take a look at the past tense and the past participle. That is the fourth and the fifth form. Here, the fourth form is walked and the fifth form is also walked. The fourth form is the past tense and the fifth form is the past participle. Right? Okay. Now take a look at this verb. Here you have ate and here you have eaten. So what's the difference over here? What is the difference over here between these two verbs? The difference is here you have added ed and ed to both the verbs. That is, the past tense and the past participles are similar in this type of verb. And here it's different. It is totally different. Ate, eaten. Here it is totally different. So this is the difference between the regular and the irregular verbs, which means when you have the same past tense and the same participle like this, where walked, they are similar, same. But here you have two different words, ate, eaten. Here, these type of verbs are called as irregular verbs, and here these are called as regular verbs. So the thing that you have to understand is when a verb takes the same kind of past tense and the same form of past participle, then you call it as regular, and when they are different like this, they are irregular. Let me give you a couple of a few more examples, like talk becomes talks, talking, talked, talked. Pay attention to the fourth and the fifth form. That is talked, talked, played, played, kept, kept, thought, thought. Whereas here, if you take a look at these examples, that is write, swim, sing, and run. In the past tense, write becomes wrote, and in past participle, it becomes written. Swim becomes swam and then swum in past participle. Sing is sang and sung. Run is ran and run. So here you can clearly see that the verbs here, the past tense and the past participle are similar. Here the past tense and the past participle are different. So that is why these type of verbs are called regular verbs and these types are called as irregular verbs. And the forms are in root form, plus S form, ing form, past tense, and then past participle. Now let us move on to another type of verb, that is transitive and intransitive. The words are self-explanatory. Transitive, as in when the action is transferred. Intransitive, when the action is not transferred, when it is self-sufficient. Like, if you take this example, which is here, he threw the ball. When he threw, this is the action, right? This is the verb. So when he threw the ball, sorry, he threw something. What was that? That was the ball. So the action has been transferred from this word onto the object. Now this is our object. This is our subject. And the subject is performing some action and that action has been received by somebody. The one who receives it is our object, right? So this is our transitive verb, when the action is transferred on to the object like this here. So this is a transitive verb. And remember, transitive verbs are those which cannot exist without the object. They always need a verb to make a complete meaningful sentence. Transitive verbs are those which transfer the action to something else, to an object, like the ball here. And here she loves. What does she love? Chocolates. She spoke. What did she speak? The truth. I bought. What did she buy? Cookies. So here the action bought, spoke, loves, and through has been transferred on to the objects. You cannot say he threw. Well, you can definitely say, but then what did he throw? What did he throw? That question is definitely going to arise, right? She loves. What does she love? He spoke. What did he speak? I bought. What did I buy? So there is an incomplete sense. And to complete the sense, you definitely need an object. And here the action has been transferred onto the object. And that is why these verbs are called as transitive verbs. Now let us try and take a look at intransitive verbs. Like I told you, the intransitive verbs are self-explanatory, and intransitive means the ones where the action is not transferred but then remains with the subject. Like she sang. Well, definitely here there is no need for you to mention what did she sing, because this is self-explanatory. It is self-sufficient. She sang, as in she is singing. Similarly, she smiled. She smiled. She cried or she laughed. You do not have to bring in the object over here to make the statement meaningful. It is already meaningful. She sang, she smiled. It is already complete and also is expressing complete sense over here. And these verbs are self-sufficient. They do not need to transfer the action onto something, like some object. That is why these verbs are called as intransitive. Transitive is when actually the action is transferred on to the object. Intransitive when it remains with the subject. Now there are a few verbs which function both like transitive and intransitive, and that can be differentiated only based on the context or the way it performs. The verb functions in a statement, like she moved her bag. She moved what? Her bag. the action being transferred to the bag. She was moving up and down, up and down. She was moving up and down. There is no necessity of action being transferred to anything else. What was she doing? She was moving up and down. So this is your intransitive verb. I wrote a letter. What did you write? A letter. So here the action has been transferred. I write. When I say I write, I definitely write maybe novels or blogs or something. That is self-sufficient, not transferred, remains with the subject. My grandma grew vegetables in her backyard, as in she is growing something, as in vegetables. My son is growing too fast. So here the growing is with the subject. It's not been transferred to anything. So intransitive. Here she plays the guitar. She is playing the guitar. So action has been transferred onto the object. The kid plays in the garden. So the kid is playing, and here the action remains with the subject. So when the action is transferred onto the object, it is transitive. When the action remains with the subject, it is your intransitive. Intransitive and transitive. That's the difference between transitive and intransitive. Now the next ones are finite and non-finite. Well, to understand finite and non-finite, you will have to be really focused, and I'll tell you how and why. Now let us take this example. She likes playing football. In this statement, I want you to tell me the verbs that you have. Please pay attention because it's not easy to differentiate between finite and non-finite. It's really difficult, but then if you pay attention, I can assure you, you will definitely be able to follow. Like I said, pick the verbs from this statement. And the verbs are likes and playing, right? Now I want you to change the subject from she to I. When you do that, what are the changes? Which of these verbs that you mentioned, like likes and playing, we have two verbs. Which ones have changed actually? Let us take a look at it. I like playing. So which ones have changed? Out of the two verbs, which ones have changed? Only the like. When you changed the subject from third person singular to first person, here likes has become like, but playing has remained intact. There is no change with that. Now let us change the tense from present tense to past tense. All right, that is here when you changed the tense. Now can you tell me which of the verbs have changed? Here, out of the two, liked, playing, like, playing, likes, playing. When you changed the tense, which of the out of the two, which verb has changed? The liked has changed, whereas playing has remained intact. So when you take a look at all the three sentences over here, likes, like, liked, it has changed. But playing, playing, playing has not changed at all. So this tells us that there are verbs which change with the change of the subject and the tense, right? It changes with the change of the subject and the tense, which is here in this statement, like actually has changed. But playing did not, right? Playing remained intact. So now this is called as finite verb. Finite verb is that verb which changes its form with the change of subject and the tense. But non-finite verb is the one which doesn't change, which doesn't get affected by the change of subject or the tense. It remains intact all through, like playing, playing, playing. I hope you understand. Even though we've changed the tense, we changed the subject. She likes playing football. I like playing football. She liked playing football. Out of the two verbs, likes and playing, only one has changed. So the one which has changed is your finite verb, and the one which has not changed is your non-finite verb. That is your finite and non-finite verb. I'm going to give you another example. She wants to rent a cab. Well, I want you to do the same thing. Change the subject and see the changes. Change it into I. And here, well, we forgot to establish the verbs. Well, wants is our verb and to rent is another verb. I want you to include to the preposition as well. I'll tell you why in a while. So wants and to rent. So here these are the two verbs. When we change the subject from she to I, wants becomes want, rent becomes, well, rent itself, no change. When you change the tense, wants becomes wanted and rent remains intact. Let me give you another example. She is running a marathon. Here the verb is and running. Now I want you to change the subject. That is, I am running. Is has changed into am, whereas running is same. When you take another example, that is, she was running. Here, when you change the, I'm sorry, this is supposed to be she, S-H-E, she. Here you have changed the tense into past tense. Therefore, am has been converted into was, is has been converted into was, but then running, and running. It has remained intact. It hasn't changed. Let me take another example, that is with the verb has and run. She has run 5 kilometers, and has is our verb. Run also is our verb. Let's change the subject. Has becomes have, run becomes run itself. And then when you change the tense, have becomes had and run remains intact, no change. So what do you understand by all this? Well, when I've given you all these examples over here, you can see that only one verb is changing and the other one is not. Here playing, and here to rent, and here running, and here run. These verbs did not change at all, even when the subject was changed or the tense was changed, right? These verbs remained intact, whereas here, want converted itself into wants, and it converted itself into wanted, right? When the subject and the tense was changed. Similarly, got converted into am and then into was. Similarly, has, have, and had. With the verbs like playing, to rent, running, run, they did not change. So when the verbs change with the change of the subject and the tense, you call them as finite verbs. And when they do not change and remain intact like this, and when they do not get affected by the change of the subject or the tense, they are called non-finite. Here, this is called as gerund, and this, with the inclusion of the preposition to, is called as infinitive. And here, this is called as present participle. And here, this is called as past participle. Well, I am not going to go into the details of these non-finite verbs. I am going to record another video where I will give you detailed explanation about these gerunds, infinitives, and present and past participles. Well, that is all for today. I hope you have understood. Please leave your comments below and let me know whether this was helpful or not. And do not forget to subscribe the video. Do not forget to hit that bell icon. And most importantly, do not forget to type that code TA01 to avail that extra 10% off discount on the existing discount. Well, do join our Telegram group for latest updates on our upcoming videos. Well, see you all again. Bye-bye. Have a good day.